Interface 2030. Garrett gazed up to the stars. Only a handful could be seen for the glare of the city lights. It was the same in every city, although he was surprised he could see more than one or two in Tianjin. If he could wipe away the glare, he would see everything, just as his ancestors once could. It wasn't the night sky that had changed, it was humanity's increasingly limited perception of it. The world was smaller, more human-focused, as if the truth didn't matter so much as what people wanted to see. Garrett wondered why humanity was so important, given the unfathomable size of the universe. Was our existence really so crucial, or was it the merest happenstance? Perhaps all the most interesting things occurring in the universe were happening on another planet in another galaxy, which, if true, would do little to dampen human hubris. And it certainly didn't keep people from shouting and beating their chests over things that didn't matter at all. What did matter, thought Garrett, wasn't human existence so much our capacity for continual improvement. If only more people gave a damn about bettering themselves. Could so many people really assume the human animal had achieved perfection already? If the current slate of wars were any indication, humanity still had a long way to go, if it was even possible for humanity to improve. If people weren't interested in evolving, at least Garrett could create organisms that could. Artificial intelligence could troubleshoot their own inefficiencies, learning from every error to reduce possible deviations. For now, AI needed people, but one day, AI would no longer need humans to fix them. They would fix themselves, and perhaps they would help fix humanity. "I can walk you back to your hotel," suggested his son Bryce, a graduate student of 23 now living in Tianjin, the world's first green city, and now the world's first fully automated city. It was a city of 30 million people, but it was a city that didn't need people to manage anything. Technology managed the flow of life, providing necessities and transporting people around the clock. City life had never been so efficient. When Bryce agreed to join the MindLink study, he was installed in government housing in the Binhai Economic Zone near the coast. Garrett knew Bryce had gone to China, although it took a few months for Garrett to find out about MindLink, and another month to confirm Bryce's whereabouts and arrange the trip. Garrett had been in Tianjin for a day and been in Bryce's company for barely 2 hours. But Bryce was like a stranger, humoring a middle-aged man claiming to be his father. "I don't need to go back to the hotel," answered Garrett, wondering if he was the kind of father Bryce once accused him of being, disinterested and aloof. Garrett's thoughts were drifting, but it didn't mean he'd lost interest in the conversation, although it wasn't much of a conversation with Bryce so tight-lipped about everything. "I didn't fly around half the world to spend my time in a hotel when I want to talk to you," explained Garrett. "I told you I'm fine," replied Bryce with a reassuring smile. Bryce was more conventionally handsome than his father and considerably more athletic. Had Bryce applied himself more at college, one might have considered them intellectual equals. But Bryce was often half-hearted about Garrett's passions. Although Bryce began a rigorous engineering program at Caltech, he quickly lost interest, dabbling in a possible music career, before barely graduating with a degree in philosophy. Garrett tried to keep in touch with Bryce after graduation and was surprised to discover Bryce enrolled in a graduate program for counseling. Had Bryce found his calling, wondered Garrett? Would he help people as Bryce's mother once did? Garrett intended to find out, although the first school year barely wrapped up before Bryce disappeared again, allegedly agreeing to participate in an international study on mind augmentation. It was called MindLink, a self-described think tank committed to the future of exceptionalism, although Garrett thought it sounded more like a messianic, misguided cult than a legitimate scientific venture. MindLink funded the development of mind and body enhancement, although it wasn't clear how this would be accomplished. It also wasn't clear what MindLink expected of its test subjects. Augmentation required tampering, but what had they done to Bryce? Garrett's son seemed so listless and unemotional. Bryce had always been so quick to take issue with his father, but the usual provocations, and there were many, barely earned a shrug. What happens when they get the results they need from you? Asked Garrett. What do you mean? Asked Bryce. When they're done with you, what then? I made a commitment, answered Bryce, seemingly surprised by the question. What kind of commitment? They gave me a life here. Why would I give that up? This isn't your home, replied Garrett, concerned that Bryce might refuse to come home. Had he been cajoled into surrendering his former life? Perhaps MindLink was indeed a cult. Is this your decision? Asked Garrett. I made my decision before I came here. You can change your mind, Bryce. Why do you call me that? Asked Bryce. You mean Bryce? It's your name, replied Garrett, losing his patience. We don't need the past to inform our future, answered Bryce, with surprising equanimity. You choose the future. As I said, I already made my choice, and I'm happy now. I don't think I was happy before. Garrett stiffened. Was this yet another veiled suggestion that Garrett was a failed parent? What had he not given Bryce? Was it his fault Bryce's mother died so young? She was Taiwanese, which Garrett thought was the reason for Bryce's decision to travel to China, although this was mainland China, and this had nothing to do with Lillian and everything to do with a so-called think tank that wasn't being honest about its intentions. What had they done to Bryce that he could refuse to return home? You're happy here? Asked Garrett, glancing about the food market. The locals weren't given to stare, but it was clear to Garrett that neither he nor his son belonged there. It wasn't just the language barrier. There was something different about the people in Binhai. Locals kept to themselves, rarely speaking to one another, yet everyone seemed familiar with one another. So close, there was no need to say a word. Garrett had downloaded the Babbel app, designed to provide real-time translation of what someone said, while also translating his words into any number of languages, although everyone seemed to understand him even when he spoke English. All the same, Garrett had never before felt like such an outsider, and his son's curious formality only accentuated his sense of isolation. Yes, I'm very happy here, answered Bryce with the faintest of smiles. Something was amiss, and it was already making Bryce a stranger. Not that they were ever close, but at least they argued. Now, the odds of an argument seemed infinitesimal. Bryce was the very picture of composure. What do you do here? Asked Garrett. I live, answered Bryce. You don't have to worry about me anymore. But I do, more than ever, and if you're trying to get a rise out of me, good job. You're still angry with me about everything. I get it. Punish me. But don't punish yourself here. You don't have to be here. There are other ways to get back at me, and maybe I can make things right. What can I do? I'll do what I can. You know that. I really wish I knew what you wanted from me. I don't need anything, answered Bryce as if he meant it. You might be happier here too, added Bryce. I'm just fine where I am, thank you, answered Garrett, wondering why everyone, the diners and even the passers-by, seemed so content. Were all of these people test subjects of MindLink? Perhaps the entire suburb was in on it. I have my work, added Garrett, wishing he didn't have to worry about his son. He taught cybernetics and engineering, although his recent studies were designed to improve the ability of devices to learn from the environment. But better adaptive systems required improved processing, which first required improved microchip technology. Fortunately, components were getting more sophisticated. Eventually, machines would keep getting smarter until they would outsmart the creators. But wasn't that the entire point of creation, to give expression to all that was possible? Garrett had focused early research on the capability of brain-computer interfacing. He'd partnered with experts in neuroprosthetics to engineer devices that could help restore sight, hearing, and movement. The goal was to engineer prosthetics that could improve cognitive function. But Garrett was an engineer, not a neurologist. Besides which, the implication of brain prosthetics unnerved him, since it was so easy to misuse them. Even if devices were designed for the benefit of the user, it was all too easy for others to control the prosthetics and, in turn, influence thought and behavior. It wasn't for science to improve the human brain, turning people into cyborgs. How could any machine prove effective if human emotions could undermine it? Humans were unable to acknowledge their failures. It was the nature of the ego. Machines, on the other hand, could seek out errors and correct them. Garrett tried to acknowledge his own failures, especially when it came to his son. Lillian's death was devastating for him, although it was especially hard for Bryce, who was only 8 at the time. He'd once been so buoyant and cheerful. Over the years, the boy became increasingly withdrawn, although he still excelled in his studies with remarkable single-mindedness. Garrett didn't tell Bryce the truth about his mother's suicide until Bryce was in college. Bryce seemed to take the news well enough, but it wasn't long before he began tuning out his engineering work. At least Bryce never saw Lillian dead on the floor from the overdose, thought Garrett. They have the best facilities here, said Bryce, referencing Garrett's engineering studies, and better resources. I know they respect you a great deal. This has nothing to do with me, answered Garrett, and everything to do with why you're here acting like nothing bothers you when I know full well you're still angry with me. Why would I be angry with you? You've always been angry with me. You said Mum died because of me, remember? You thought I didn't care, but I did care. You didn't know what I felt, and I suppose I didn't know what you felt, but I wanted to understand. I wish you could have told me what you felt instead of having me guess all the time. They told me I was unhappy once, answered Bryce dispassionately. Were you and I the same? No, you were like your mother. I wish you still had her. We wouldn't be here talking about everything but for what really matters. And what matters is why the hell you're out here with people who don't even speak your language and who, I'm sure, will never accept you as one of them. We're all human beings, answered Bryce calmly. Oh, don't pretend I don't know that. Do you even speak Mandarin, or is it Cantonese? I forget the difference. I can understand everything they say, continued Bryce. How? Bryce tapped the side of his head. I hear what they say within seconds of them saying it. And they can hear me. It's a translator. They put a translator in your head? A communication device. Translation is just one of its features. What else? Asked Garrett, realizing it was worse than he'd feared. This wasn't just a matter of undue influence. This was a matter of hijacking someone's neural pathways. It helps ground me, make me feel more relaxed. Is it a prosthesis? Asked Garrett. They call it augmented learning. It helped me overcome many emotional challenges. They showed me footage of what I was, but I'm different now. Augmented learning? That's what they call it? It's mind control, if you ask me. It's cognitive enhancement. Not only can I understand everyone around me, I make better decisions, and I can retain memories longer, do more precise calculations in my head. Everything's faster now, and I'm focused. Every detail. Everything we said since we started talking, I remember it as if it just happened. Can they upload information to your device? I don't know, said Bryce. They can tell you what to think, said Garrett. They can tell you not to go home with me. They told me you'd want to take me home, but they never told me what to think. Do you think they wouldn't be able to influence what you think? It's the same thing you were doing when I was a kid. You talked about making life easier for people who couldn't see things the same as everyone else. Now everyone can see the same. We get the same information. Don't do this to punish me, Bryce, pleaded Garrett. Why would I want to punish you? Asked Bryce, as if he couldn't remember. It was never my fault, answered Garrett, hoping that he could offer the apology his son wanted. I love your mother. She didn't do it because of me. I tried to talk to her. She needed help. Maybe I could have done more, and there isn't a day that goes by I don't think about what I could have done to make things different. If only I'd done something different, she'd still be around, and you and I wouldn't be in Tianjin talking about how you intend to stay here when you and I know that's just your pride. Because you're still my son, and you're as proud as I am, and unable to admit you're wrong. But I don't need you to admit anything. I'll admit I was wrong, though. I was wrong not to tell you the truth, and I was wrong to avoid talking about it. But how can I talk about it without you blaming me for everything that went wrong? She was unhappy, replied Bryce to the moment Garrett paused for breath. So was I. But I'm going to be all right now. You shouldn't worry. How can I not worry? It's probably my fault you're out here. Your thoughts, the property of MindLink. Which is an American company, or is it Chinese? I don't even know why they're doing this here. They see the future, replied Bryce, as if the answer were easy. You do too. They're trying to control your thoughts, Bryce, insisted Garrett, his voice getting louder. He didn't care if he made a scene. They've got no business keeping you here against your will. I don't care what they had you sign. You can't sign away your thoughts. They showed me the future, answered Bryce with a smile. This is it. The future is robotics, said Garrett. It's not turning people into robots, and I'm not letting them do this to you. I'm going to talk to someone, okay? Garrett stood up. Why was Bryce so secretive about the location of MindLink? They had a phone number, which made it possible for Garrett to arrange contact with Bryce, but there was no physical address. It's all right, insisted Bryce. No, it's not, explained Garrett, grabbing Bryce by the arms. How is he going to talk reason to his son? This is not okay, what they've done to you. I'm fine, insisted Bryce, his hands to his father's shoulders. Others were taking notice. Some even appeared alarmed. Garrett was relieved to be eliciting real emotions from people, although Bryce remained unflappable. You don't know what they're doing to you, yelled Garrett, shaking Bryce fiercely before everything went dark. Garrett awoke in a windowless office, cement walls reminiscent of a jail cell, although the furnishings were ornate. Works of 20th century abstraction colored the walls. He sat on a beautifully upholstered divan at one corner of the room. At another corner sat a balding functionary, tieless in a fitted jacket, behind an elaborately crafted desk. Eyes narrowed as if he were studying Garrett. Mr. Lida? Asked the man, a curious echo effect to his voice. Was he a government official? Was he in the country on a limited visa? Was it being revoked because he'd lost his temper in public? He would protest. Why am I here? Asked Garrett, his head throbbing. Where's Bryce? Bryce is downstairs. He was very concerned about you. Garrett could hear the blood pulsing inside his head, his skin tight against his skull as if his brain had swelled in size. Everything felt normal, although there was a bandage on the right side of his head, just over his ear. His head had been shaved. What happened to me? Asked Garrett, his vision blurred and his head swimming slightly. He lowered his head to the divan. You're all right now, answered the man, without a trace of an accent. But what happened to me? You fell, and we got you medical attention. As I said, you're all right now. I was talking to Bryce, and then... Garrett trailed off. He couldn't remember what happened. What's this? Asked Garrett, touching the side of his head. The slightest contact produced a sharp pain. You shouldn't touch that. Why? The scar is still fresh. Why does this hurt so much? Would you like to feel better? Asked the man, standing behind his desk. Of course, but what does that matter now? I don't care how I feel. Garrett threw his feet on the floor, his head heavy, as he clutched the side of the divan to keep from losing his balance. What if I told you we could help you feel your old self in a matter of minutes? What is this? Asked Garrett, dreading the proposal. If you don't mind my asking, I'm curious about something, and I'm hoping for your honesty. What were your intentions when we flew you out here? Is this MindLink? This is just a building. MindLink is everywhere. It's in the spaces in between things. It's what connects every mind on our network. It's a network? Multiple points of connection, Garrett. Might I call you Garrett, or would you prefer Professor? I've long admired your work on the Interface Project. Your work was an inspiration to many, me included. It's a shame you discontinued your studies when you did. The remote trigger was particularly impressive. When I realized you'd abandoned your work, I picked up where you left off. I was going down the wrong path, and the wrong people were interested in it. You're a man of many talents. I understand you've been attempting to engineer an artificial brain. I'm far from accomplishing such a thing. Your academic institutions in the States are always strapped for cash, but what if that weren't a problem anymore? What if you had all the components you needed to give flesh to your blueprints? What do you know about my blueprints? It's a guess. Correct me if I'm wrong. The man wasn't wrong, but Garrett didn't have the energy to lie. But why was the man asking about him when he didn't know the first thing about this man. And who are you? You can call me Frederick. You don't look like a Frederick, answered Garrett. I was born in the States like you, and like you, there was a limit to what I could accomplish at academic institutions that let peer review kill anything truly original and bold. Men with vision are expected to take tiny, measured, careful steps, since reputation is everything. But it isn't everything, is it? You understand my concerns, don't you? What matters is the future, and it's our job to break the old patterns and claim it all, not shuffle, heads bowed to the usual mediocrity reserved for academics. But we're creators, not academics. In fact, you yourself wrote that creation is what makes life worth living. You read that? I told you I've admired you for some time. We are more alike than you think. I don't know you, answered Garrett, shaking his head. He wanted to stand and walk out the door, but he feared losing his balance. You have a chance to know me and to know everyone in our team, replied Frederick with a good-natured grin. Garrett could only shake his head. Although, you prefer your solitude, don't you? That's what Bryce told us. You worked hard and kept to yourself. I'm the same, but imagine if there was a team of people supporting your quest to create a new form of life. The kind of artificial intelligence that will one day put human intelligence to shame. It's inevitable, of course. What we don't know is how soon it will happen, and who will help us cross that threshold. Will it be you? Garrett had always been trying to convince others of the value of his ideas. For the first time, someone else was trying to do the convincing. No one's more deserving than you, continued Frederick. You've done so much to show how the complexity of the brain can be duplicated. They're only ideas. And how else does greatness begin? You can't promise people something better only to take everything away. And what are we taking away? Asked Frederick. Are your subjects thinking for themselves? Countered Garrett. Is my son making his own decisions, or are you making those decisions for him? Subjects are of no use to us unless they have the capacity for reason. This is a cult. Exactly how do you expect us to build the future, Professor? Asked Frederick. Should we do nothing at all while we consider and reconsider all the moral implications? Then you admit there are moral implications. What do you think we're doing here? Asked Frederick, seating himself on a seat near Garrett and gazing at him like a psychoanalyst getting a read on a patient. You're putting a cap on human possibility. What kind of future can we imagine when our thoughts belong to organizations like this, or is the Chinese government behind it? Did you know that the American government is introducing microchipping on a mass scale to make it easier to track terrorists, or so they say? Thankfully, there are limits to what the American government can coerce. You believe that? Asked Frederick. When power is to be had, how many people actually refuse it? Garrett didn't believe anyone. He only believed the dictates of his conscience. But his conscience wasn't much good at getting him the grants he needed to lift his research to the next level. The future could be had in a matter of years, but the prospect of human-like artificial intelligence was becoming a hard sell. Prosthetics and other enhancements suited the collective ego better than robotics. I believe the future will take time, answered Garrett, wary of any offer that seemed too good to be true. Wasn't it you who said that the only way to save mankind from itself is to create a more intelligent form of life? Garrett wondered how Frederick knew so much about him. It sounded like something he would have said, but he never kept track of his interviews with the press. You're luring people here and convincing them to put chips in their brains. We're studying the working of the brain. I look forward to sharing all of our research with you. And what's your purpose with Bryce? He's free to leave. No one is here against their will. If something makes you feel empowered, would you walk away from it? I need to know Bryce can walk away. Would you walk away from an opportunity to create our salvation? There are risks with any technology. Who better than you to minimize those risks? Suggested Frederick, standing and returning behind his desk. If you want something from me, speak plain, said Garrett, feeling enough strength to stand, his arm to the wall. It would be better to walk out before Frederick convinced him of something foolish. I think your talent has been wasted back in the States. They envy your abilities too much to help you succeed. Here, ego takes second place to service, and we will serve your vision. How much money do you need? You need only ask, and it's yours. It's not the money, it's the technology to build everything in a sufficiently micro scale. Do you still think at a micro level, really, Professor? It's nanotechnology you need, and our nanotech rivals anything your American corporations are accomplishing. And they will take your ideas and make them theirs. And you won't do the same? Asked Garrett. Garrett feared such temptation. There was always a price to pay. What price did they expect of him? Frederick smiled. I hope your creations will be more trusting than you. How can I trust you if you haven't been honest about what you've done to my son? Said Garrett, inching toward the door. And what happened to me? Frederick nodded before turning to an old phonograph player in a far corner. Placing the needle on a vinyl record, a scratchy rendering of a Chopin piece reverberated from all sides of the room. What is it to be human, Garrett? Asked Frederick, closing his eyes. Is it in what we know, or is it in what we can never know? Rhetorical question, of course, but I'll tell you what I think. I think evolution wouldn't have been possible without the unknown to entice us. I mean, what if monkeys were never curious enough to leave the trees? Garrett stepped to the door, but he was still feeling groggy. What happens, continued Frederick, when we lose our faith in what's possible just because we're so concerned with what's practical? Even scientists must take some things on faith. The best scientists remembering that God hasn't abandoned us. God is waiting for us to create him, or her, and that God will help us understand our purpose here. The Chopin piece was familiar to Garrett. He was trying to place the song, his muscles relaxing, anger subsiding. He returned to the divan. Some claim artificial intelligence isn't possible, but they forget that the human brain doesn't have a monopoly on consciousness, although nature has never developed a better tool to utilize it. Build a better tool, Professor, and imagine the possibilities. Garrett suspected he'd been drugged, although it wasn't fatigue he felt, it was confusion. He knew he had a reason to be angry, but he was beginning to forget why. Some injustice had been done his son. He needed to demand the truth before he lost interest in it. What have you done to me? Demanded Garrett. We've given you the same cortical implant we've given everyone else. It was only a precautionary measure. It helps regulate adrenaline levels, epinephrine. It's a mood stabilizer, that's all. No mind control, I assure you. Although our studies have revealed increased higher-level functioning, improved reasoning, and greater receptivity to the thoughts of others. Would you be surprised to know I've been speaking Mandarin the entire time? There's a fraction of a second delay between what I say and the English version you hear. Marvelous, isn't it? Garrett could almost hear two voices. He thought it was in his head, but his thoughts had never been clearer, if only his body weren't failing him. Of course, even our enhanced abilities can take us so far. What matters most is the creation of something entirely new, with unlimited capacity for intelligence. Turn off the music, ordered Garrett, suspecting it was being used as a trigger to derail him from his purpose. But he wasn't forgetting anything. He understood what had been done to him, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to hate Frederick for it. This is one of my favorite pieces. Do you think machines will enjoy music as we do? What about Bryce? Asked Garrett, trying to remember there was some reason for anger. We never needed him, Professor. We brought him here because it was the only way to bring you here. And now that you're here, you'll see that everything is possible, isn't it? Garrett no longer knew what to feel. All he wanted was to create. And Frederick was granting him the opportunity. We have everything set up for you. Whatever you need only ask. You have a team of our very brightest at your disposal, and of course, your son will be here for you. Did you know how much he admired you when he wasn't busy hating you? He said he doesn't know you very well, but he wants to change that. Garrett couldn't remember hate, nor could he imagine anger. He said your wife Lillian loved Chopin. He also said the only time he ever saw you cry was listening to Chopin. Was it sadness Garrett was supposed to feel? He didn't know what that was like. You never wasted your humanity on trivialities, continued Frederick. You put everything into your work. Imagine machines that can feel as you feel, but never hurt. What hurt? Thought Garrett. Why couldn't he remember feeling hurt? Was he forgetting to be himself, or was he finally remembering what he'd always been? And one day, that interface between man and machine will be gone, because there's no need for one, no barrier at all. Everything will exist in here, added Frederick, tapping his head. Nothing to divide us, and nothing to keep us from experiencing God. Garrett was happy. There was so much to do, a future to shape. Was this God? This knowing that everything was as it was meant to be? Was this God? This knowing that everything was possible?